But it is unambiguous within the context of this model that workers are better off, in China's case, workers are better off, capital owners are worse off in terms of both goods, both in terms of price of cloth as well as in terms of machinery. This particular set of conclusions is known as the Stolper-Samuelson theorem. Remember, we had the Stolper-Samuelson relationship or equation, which shows the relationship between relative prices and relative factor returns. But the theorem itself talks about relative prices and then the relative rates of return. The real rate of return on the abundant factor increases, the real rate of return on the scarce factor decreases. Okay. So again, that's just looking at that left-hand section of the Hechter-Ohlin diagram. Okay, so now we need to think about what we did last week with the Ricardian model. And specifically in the classic Ricardian model, but even in the modern Ricardian model, what we can show is that everybody gains from trade. Everybody's better off. Everybody moves to the expanding industry in the case of the classic model, and their wages go up. Their purchasing power with respect to their export good stays the same. Their purchasing power with respect to their import good has improved. In a Hechter-Ohlin model, it's slightly different. The real incomes of the abundant factor have increased, but the real incomes of the scarce factor have actually gone down. So now, all of a sudden, we have winners and we have losers from international trade. Winners and losers. So how do we talk about gains from trade when we have some people who lose? Now, we'll talk about this in much more detail a little bit later. I want to skip ahead a slide. But one of the things that we have seen is that international trade expands a country's consumption choices. Right? We get to consume along the budget line. And with international trade, that means we can actually consume a set of goods that is greater than what we're able to produce. That is outside of our production possibilities frontier. So that trade actually expands the consumption choices that we have available to us. And as we've seen, that moves us to a higher country indifference curve and a higher level of aggregate economic welfare. Okay? So this is the previous slide. That's what this shows. Right? With international trade, we change the slope of the budget line, allowing us to now have the same income, but now to consume a much greater quantity of goods and services than what we had before. Now, one of the things that we can show here is that it's actually possible to consume goods in this area, on this part of the budget line. The fact that we don't, given where we have a community indifference curve, doesn't matter. Now notice that every one of those points on this section, right here, shows that we're consuming more of both goods. More of both goods. So that's at least one of our consumption possibilities. So if it's possible as a country for us to consume more of both goods, and these are goods, things that we positively desire, then it also suggests that it has to be a higher level of economic welfare. Now, we don't have to necessarily consume in that particular section. And in fact, as I've drawn it, we wouldn't. We would be at point B, because that combination of goods gives us an even higher level of economic welfare. But we can consume more. And so when we want to talk about the gains from trade, what we can say is, okay, we know some people are going to gain and other people are going to lose. So the economist's way out of this dilemma on how to net it out, do we have net gains or net losses, is to ask the following question. Could the gainers fully compensate the losers for their losses and still be better off? Right? Could those who win fully compensate the losers for their losses, keeping them even, and still be better off? So if that's possible, and by the way it is, we can consume more of both goods, so we can at least consume the old pattern, and therefore also have some left over. If you can, though, this concept then is something that is known as the compensation principle. Can the winners win, can the winners compensate the losers for all of their losses and still have gains left over? Okay, so that would be the compensation principle. And in the context of the way we set the model up, we are clearly on a higher community indifference curve. We can be up here, we can give every loser exactly what they were consuming before and still have stuff left over. So we know that that is theoretically possible. Now, the compensation principle does not require that the compensation actually take place. Okay? Only asks, is it possible to do so? Not suggesting that it actually takes place. Whoops, okay. So just because we could doesn't mean we have to. Again, we will talk more about the compensation principle and this notion about how do we assess winners and losers and how do we net that out more over the next couple of weeks, because we'll look at other models where we will also see that there are losses. One of the things that you might anticipate is that the losers feel their losses more than the winners feel their gains, and therefore they are more intense in protecting their personal status quo, their pre-free trade status quo. And that's one of the reasons why we have protectionist measures. Okay, before you go, let me talk about problem set number 1, which is posted on BSpace under problem sets. So it is posted as a Word template, and I want you to answer it on that template. So what most students in the past have always found to be useful is to print it out, work on it, and then go back, because your answers need to be word processed. So anything that requires an explanation needs to be word processed. It also helps us a great deal if you word process your name, last name first, comma, first name last, just so your GSIs, when they're dealing with their 60 papers, can actually get everything sorted more quickly. Your diagrams, and I have given you access boxes for all your diagrams, so that's the size that I want those to be. Don't make them smaller, don't make them bigger. That's a good size, you can get everything in there. but that'll tell you what the size of your axis boxes need to be. You can do your diagrams by hand. If you want to do them on a computer with really nice straight lines, the GSIs who will be grading it will love you for it, but that's not required. We do ask you to be neat and to label completely. So on Tuesday, those problem sets will be due. So after you've worked on it, all you have to do is circle the multiple choices, do the 2 long questions. After you've got it completely word processed, print it out, staple it, and find your GSI on Tuesday. Yes? Will partial credit be given on the free response questions? Maybe. Yes, we give partial credit. So now, one other thing. I also posted on bSpace copies of the exams that I gave in the fall of 2009. So there's I only gave 2 exams that semester. I know we have 3, so don't worry, they had a term paper. You don't. So you might want to look at by the way, I posted both the exams for you to look at. I also posted the answers to those 2 exams. You might want to look at those answers just to see the way that I answer the questions. Not to assume that the way I answer it is a perfect answer. Not even to assume that the way I answer it is a correct answer. I hope it's correct. But it'll give you a sense of what detail or what information I'm actually looking for. Most of my answers on exams that I give the GSIs so they can grade them are much more complete than I actually expect from you, but nevertheless has all the essential information in there. So that should give you a good template to think about when you're doing the answers on your problem sets. Okay? Any question about your problem set? Okay, have fun working on that this weekend. I'll see you on Tuesday, and go Bears.